Go.
Hola, me llamo Josh y la industrial revolución tiene impacto en transportación durante la 1850 a 1930 porque creó la primero carro de historia. Transportación es para transportar personas y tiene tecnología. La transportación está comenzando. According to a study in 2019, 95% of Americans used cars. That's a lot of cars. Driving to work, going to school, going to just everyday places. But back in the 1800s, before the car was invented in 1886, they had to get around on a horse and carriage. The horse and carriage was a staple back in their time. It was for people, it was a very rich product. The horse you had to obtain, which was very expensive, and then the carriage you had to obtain. And both of the items were very expensive. And so a lot of people couldn't afford the horse and carriage because they didn't have money. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be sitting around all day trying to take care of my horse, feed it, water it, and then fix my carriage. So Mercedes came together with a partner and they created the very first car in history. Now, it wasn't advanced car, it was a very simple car, but it was a lot cheaper than the horse and carriage. This only cost about $20 or $1,000. So, in turn, people could buy a car that was more effective and not have to spend as much money. Now, the first car, obviously, it's good, but it wasn't the best. It was revolutionary because of what it could become, but at the time it could only go 18 miles an hour. So it wasn't effective as a horse that could go maybe 20 or 40 miles an hour. And it was very bumpy because it was on dirt roads, which leads me to the production of the car. There are two things. One, when Henry Ford started making the car, he invented the assembly line. The assembly line is a very important piece in making the car and in most factories of the day. The assembly line would create a bunch of people would sit down and work on their own station instead of having to do piece by piece. And so this made everything more effective and faster so that way cars could be mass produced. The other thing is paving roads. When the first car was invented, they had dirt roads because of the horses, but the dirt roads weren't sufficient for the carriage or the first car. So when they found out that they couldn't use the dirt roads without the car braking, they had to create paving roads, which created thousands and thousands of new jobs, which also helped the labor market and the economy with all these new jobs that the assembly line and paving roads created. Now, the pollution is one of the worst things that the cars created. They didn't even know that they were polluting until 1950 when a Californian environmentalist found out that the CO2 emissions from the car were going up into the ozone layer and destroying the environment. So when the car was invented in 1886, all the way to 1950, no one knew that the car was polluting the entire world. And this is bad because the pollution caused the destruction of biomes, it poisoned lakes and poisoned waters, and it just made animal life more difficult because at the time the factory pollution was also going on. So when they both, in turn, the car pollution and the factory pollution, it didn't help anything. And it was just a terrible thing for the car, but there wasn't anything a lot of people figured out to do until later on in history. And so the lasting impacts were the thousands of jobs that were created from the assembly line and the paving and the pollution, which it's not a good lasting impact to have, but it's something that they just had to deal with. And one thing about it is it's a small price to pay, but for something that huge in history to advance things, I think it was worth it because the car revolutionized transportation and it went all over the world. It didn't just stay in one place, and it helped build trains and helped build motors, and it helped transition everything into a different part of history, which in turn helped the entire history of it. And so one of the biggest things is the evolution of the car. So they went from having a horse and carriage, which you had to maintain and take care of, and it was just a pain to have all that work instead of just buying a car. And then they finally created the first car, which wasn't the best. It just got the job done. It wasn't like per se the most effective way, but it was a lot more efficient than the horse. And to nowadays, where we have an electric car, where it takes the pollution factor out of it, and so now you have all the benefits of transportation and travel and the car, but you don't have to worry about the pollution and the environment, and you're hurting the environment. And so this is why the car revolutionized the world and how it changed the entire world as we know it.